Julie here with Sirius Dallas Moon. We're at the full moon in Libra, and right about the full moon, probably right on the degree, I see news about the countries that are membership in Hague, The Hague, were continuing the disciplinary procedures against the main litigator, Karim Khan, who basically began to litigate Israel for war crime. Now, if you are frustrated that the authentic, true um, crimes against humanity, rape is a crime against humanity because rape is done to siphon energy and to launder money in order to commit terror, for example, genocide in Palestine. And the people who rape are part of secret societies that cross cultures, generations, and countries. For example, the people that claim to litigate Israel for war crime, they are a part of the both, let's say, Palestinian and Jewish and Israeli, uh, Arabic and not Arabic. And I say Jewish for a reason, because here I'm talking about Jewish Israelis that trafficked, that used technology, that used dark occult to traffic, to torture, to energy siphon, in order to in order to extort the military elite, both in Hamas, both in IDF, to commit atrocities and to delay the order to get into the places where the atrocities are. The people that were targeted were the um, people were targeted to go there were the people that resisted the Me Too. And I know because I'm one of them. There were many attempts to try to put me in this Nova party now. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't party in those particular settings. Um, and actually, psychedelics, even though they are considered healing, are probably not so good for my condition, which is um, basically combating their dumbfuckery, okay? Combating the Epsteins and the stuff like that. But and this was prevention of access to any type of therapy that actually curates, because patient sovereignty was sacrificed in order to create more looting victims, reasoning to respond by genocide. Those things are all attributed to the same human traffickers, and we don't see the human traffickers usually when we talk about the true state. That was exposed. That was exposed when United States wanted Deming to not be in the Hague because he supported the separatists and he could litigate United States for Kurdistani genocide in Iraq rather than Iraq. So now we see exactly the same case, and this Karim Khan, we have to take into account that absolutely it is a move by Israel to not be litigated for war crimes. I predicted something like this to happen actually from the side of United States about Kurdistan, which could still happen. And that might expose the Rolodex list, um, or the full list. Um, Certain people might be in the full list, and yeah, address the intricacies around and so on and so forth. But from perspective of, hey, the patent for extortion cult is creating a sex offender by torturing of him since child, or her since child, if it's like a Ghislaine Maxwell, without ability to die, without ability to let out, and then they begin to become perpetrators. They can only receive housing by working with those networks, and then they would get in such chronic trauma, they would get smug or feel omnipotent simply because everything died around them and their only power was in being a perpetrator. They would get smug, and then they would get exposed according to the agendas in order to hold somebody else accountable for the war crimes that people were extorted to commit after they were basically grown in conditions that create sex offender. So the only way to abolish extortion codes is to interfere in that particular, and we can interfere by that if we saw debt states by housing without rape, independent of ability to work, um, and work that is not rape and does not drain or siphon energy. Even hard working conditions are draining on the life energy. But this is basically slavery. So people might get pissed. Oh, this person, he was supposed to litigate as well for war crimes. Suddenly they found sexual misconduct. He authentically, according to what I see here, committed rape. And rape here was rape energy siphoning in the context of femicide. Same thing that created 7th October, same thing that created the genocide in Gaza. And as I predicted, this happens on full moon in Libra, when Venus is in her home sign, applying to square Pluto. So this continues on the series of episodes which I talk about how do people hold Israel accountable by abolishing rape, slavery, and energy siphoning within their countries. Israel has ascendant speaker, which gives it good position in international court. It was also how Israel was acknowledged. Okay, as a country, there has to be this country, yes, this country, no. And so the ascendant speaker was when Israel's declaration of independence was basically acknowledged. It gave it good position in the international jurisdiction and the trade system, which also placed Israel with a good credit score during a 2 years war. This is unprecedented, and by the way, exposing the dark mechanisms around that can only be done by abolishing those dark mechanisms within other countries, namely Switzerland, and for those in the house that want to litigate Israel, Netherlands, um, namely Oak Brussels, um, Brazil, but it's not only. And Israel has mid-heaven procyon, which means that it is favored. So those things make it. Now procyon is another thing. Nelson Mandela that abolished apartheid, but also abolished the bloodline segregation, internal apartheid in South Africa, and was sitting a full Saturn cycle, 28 years in jail for that, had son Procyon. And Procyon is about looking within. If there is apartheid, where is the apartheid within? And so, when it comes to Israel, its leadership, mainly the mid-heaven, or its reputation, is of a country that is able to look within to abolish the existential threat outside. And this is done actually by the people. For example, I'm half Israeli, half Dutch, and I keep talking about these very things that are in their nature procyonic. I basically keep talking about the fact that it was Jewish people that looted Hitler to commit the Holocaust, stole the wealth, what we call the Shilumim, never got to the families, built a country, but we are still dealing with what could even be considered Pyrrhus win, and the perpetuation of eternal wars. There were so many wars in Israel, almost every decade in the 70 something, 7 decades and a half that Israel exists, almost 8 decades. And as Israel approaches Uranus' return, it's going to have to either completely revolutionize the way it does a country, Um, can it sustain a civil war that is also a global war, or global civil war that's also an internal civil war? Because it's going towards such an event. The only way is to abolish rape and slavery. What do we do when the Jewish people believe that they're chosen people in the sense that non-Jews are servants to them? Because some streams of Judaism still believe that. Um, we'd have to denounce those streams of Judaism. If we don't, then Israel is yeah. Then and in many cases, many of the things that still make Israel exist is the incompetence of its Arab neighbors to abolish rape and slavery within their countries. Okay, that's a very pro-Zionic statement. We're not that difficult to beat. If the Hag litigator was not a sex offender, warlock person that does femicide, and probably also did the genocide in Gaza by extortion, it would get a very easier time to litigate Israel for genocide in Gaza, for genocide of its own people, democide, because trafficking of Israelis by Israelis basically is democide, is crime against humanity. The entire medical system designed to prevent recovery and prevent people from disobeying illegal orders. That's the meaning of psychiatry being used as a punishment. And no, Scientology cannot beat psychiatry. Because it has to abolish doing the same crimes, which means cult-like gaslighting and spiritual inquisition and end monetary looting. Now, again, we see this behavior avenging two employees that reported the claims of the assistant that was basically harassed by his Templaric behavior. Um, and we're going to see that whenever somebody will try to litigate Israel for war crimes, we're going to see these things being exposed. And really, the only way to litigate Israel for war crimes is to abolish war crimes outside Israel, namely zero rape, zero slavery, zero energy siphoning. That's the only way to beat Israel in that regard. And this structure is actually of Spica nature and of Procyon nature, which is the ascendant and mid-heaven of Israel. The same people that were trafficking together with Israeli Palestinian women tried to litigate Israel for the genocide that they extorted the Israeli elite and the Palestinian elite to commit. The Israeli elite to commit, the Palestinian elite to comply. And this money was laundered in oil, which with the Strait of Hormuz we see oil barrels crossing the roof with, and that was basically their yield until we go electric. But even going electric will not help without abolishing extortion codes. So Trump is considering to fire the Pam Bondi. Again, jurisdiction. Um, and this would be the president interfering into the jurisdiction which would probably expose anything that was not exposed on the very president structurally. Um, so, as predicted, trying to make another move in the international arena of law runs into the truth about extortion calls. And this happens at this full moon. Um, and this happens to the jurisdiction in United States and The Hague. And here's the thing. If people say, oh, when every time we try to litigate Israel, something comes up, well, take care of that something. What is that something? That something was partaking in looting Israel to commit genocide, so it can loot its wealth and genocide its people. A way more, and now, of course, those things will probably lead to many things, but here's the thing. When Israelis go outside to rape, basically, on the guise of sex work, other countries make profit off of it. Those countries will later loot Israel to commit genocide. But who are the countries that allow people, Israeli and not Israeli, to rape within its borders under the guise of sex work? There's no such thing as sex work. And people say, oh, Israel has a network of honeypots. Honeypots are basically raped and trafficked children that are used for intelligence to mind control. People have to acknowledge that there's no such thing as sex work. It is all crimes against humanity to commit genocide by the handlers and wash their hands clean. How much money is rolling legally, tax-free, by normalizing trafficking and calling it sex work? How much trafficking is done by the enforcing policing forces? How many diviners and occultists profit off of targeting people to trafficking using dark occult? MK often. But not only. Okay, don't think that you can beat Israel without abolishing these things. Just like nobody could beat the Dutch apartheid without abolishing bloodline segregation within. And Nelson Mandela, that was on the money, was a controversial leader within its own people. What was the regime before apartheid doing, if not apartheid, on the excuse of royalty or royal bloodlines? What's the meaning of royal bloodlines? It means that wealth is hereditary alone. If you weren't born to a royal family, you will be raped, trafficked, organ traded, and this would all be legal because the god is the king, and only the king would have, if the king is kind, okay? But if the king is not, even if the king is kind, the monarchy, the ranks would be looted. Not every commoner could stand to the king. And of course, even with the royal bloodline, not every person could be inheriting the monarchy. And Trump is threatening to hurt all the electricity stations of Iran for oil, which is beyond funny. Um, but to change the energy to a more free type of energy, we would need to abolish rape and slavery. Okay, if people are targeted by astral rape, then these people expect those things not only to cease and never happen again, but everything that was taken, all the wealth, all the well-being that was harmed by such targeting. Okay, fine. It's always the people that don't wake up from rape that have something to say. And they have nothing to say. And and here's the thing, because of those things, because of the hidden nature of these things, a person could be living in a building in Israel. Apartment next door could be a trafficking place. They will not hear a thing. And then if they would want to do something, the police is the last place to turn to, because the police are part of the traffickers. And it's enough for one person in the police to be a part of the traffickers for the police to be able to do nothing. In fact, when I was a student, we were working in Paris in developing neighborhood, knocking door to door to see what the people need. Certain people discovered trafficking places. Normally, one would think the next day, entire place evacuated for human trafficking. No, nothing happened. This is our public housing. This is a housing that a child goes to in order to not be raped by pedo rings. This is the right to have a dignity and a place where a person can reside so that they can rehabilitate from, let's say, sexual boundary violation. This is also a private housing where the housing that when a couple divorces, and for the man to not be so crazy that he will think he needs to kill the wife, the child, and himself, as my father taught upon divorce, um, accessibility of housing, that prevents femicide, infanticide. and prevents recruitment of people to terror by kidnapping and torture. Now, why do I know that this Kareem probably was connected to the network still in 1996? Because, again, I don't have names of full list. Because a month ago, I saw Instagram post. Let's see if we see it right now. Where they found news. No, 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 no. Again, it shows me how I looked for this. I talked about this. I saw that with the Heineken case, they may have been trying to prepare Peter R. de Vries, assassinated journalist, um, basically to try, because they were probably planning on Peter R. de Vries doing a Corvan out with Mark the True, but they were born at the same week, basically. But that did not happen. He actually worked on case of Tanya Khurun, or later his daughter would work on case of Tanya Khurun. But I can see the grooming of Peter R. de Vries through the Heineken case. First of all, to justify the mink, who probably could have been done by torture. And this is the most benevolent assumption. And here it is, a month ago. New investigation into Mark the True for possession of child sexual images within prison. Now, these things happen when they want to discredit him from speaking up about who are in the network. And I know, and if later I see, a month later I see, oh, there's another judge in The Hague is being litigated for sex offenses. It's safe to assume that it's not improbable that these people know each other, perhaps long time. That okay, how did pedophilia materia reached what's supposed to be one of the most secure prisons? Um, 4 envelopes containing images of naked women and underage girls. And he was serving life sentence, Nivelles prison. Abduction, rape, and murder. For abduction, rape, and murder. He had the mobile phone and had access to images of child sexual abuse. So again, we see the and when those things happen a month before another The Hague judge is being litigated for basically type of sexual crimes that is of authority figure violation, which is working on the same pattern as pedophilia. Okay, it's basically raping the helpless. Okay, when um, in any attempt to traffic, when we have, let's say, boss doing that to people, assistants, and so on, is working on the same patterns of pedo ring child trafficking. Yes, it does. It's basically towards the helpless. That's the psychosexual issues there. Also, the transferences between a boss and an apprentice is parental transferences. The boss is seen as an authority figure, and the younger person wants to see that they are not violated. Same, of course, in therapeutic relationships. Um, and we had lawyer makes no attempt to free Marc Dutroux. This happens in January, and then a month ago, they find basically snuff in his phone. Detroux's lawyer, Bruno Diaz, claims the same should be possible for his client. Let's see. Case of Freddy Horion, who murdered car dealer and his family. Um, and it was said that the murderer was treated inhumanely. Well, different case. Murder is different case than rape. Um, Rape is about energy siphoning and it's ritual abuse, while murder can also be ritual murder. Um, Usually, with murder, people are allowed to die. With rape, they're not always allowed to die. And indeed, for case of the truth, they were starved to death. So there was an energy siphoning ritual component to these cases. Um, Deprivation of food and so on and so forth. Um, Man is being censored and muzzled. This is against human rights. Indeed, Detru is being censored because he has a list to give, which he was as outspoken about as he could be. Um, and his lawyer could have, if his lawyer was actually a representative, he could have gone on public media, recorded a video publishing all the lists that Marc Dutroux names. And that would be the best representation. The right of the public to know exceeds what people call due process in this case, particularly because of the ranks of the people. But these lawyers want to both silence Detru and make money for representing him. Um, like I said, the cure for child sex offender, um, they have the cure for child sex offender. Which is also the cure for the children that were attacked. The children that survived, they would need, because what he did to them was what was done to him, they would basically need the curation to prevent them becoming sex offenders. And some of these children, if they were in rituals, probably survived because they were child sex offenders towards other children. um, because of the nature of the ceremonies, which is another dark issue. So again, another uh, intercepted attempt to litigate Israel for war crimes without addressing extortion calls. Again, litigating a country, Israel, US, whatnot, for war crimes, crimes against humanity, without addressing the structure of extortion cults at the fundamentals, is futile. We cannot prevent war crimes, political assassination, terroristic attacks, crimes against humanity by allowing crimes against humanity to happen and swiping it under the rug. Um, Venus applying to square Pluto. Yeah, on a relational level, anything that tries to exert power in order to preserve or make a relation go in other direction other than the embodied direction of Venus, basically zero rape, zero slavery, zero energy siphoning, is being purged. And as the moon decreases, Venus will square Pluto, which means that the square of Venus and Pluto is in the atmosphere of purging trauma bond relations and any um, patterns of exerting power over women and relations, whether financial, psychological, technological, spiritual, or military. Um, One of the things I see in various cases of army recruitment, people want to not be trafficked. People want their rights. Not now, not now. Sorry. I don't know. Let me try to take this. Okay. Here it is. People want to not be trafficked. Basically, people want their human rights. People want their residence. People don't want to have to rape in order to have child and not to be raped in order to have house and not to be raped in order to have housing. People also don't have children because of rape and trafficking. And if people have children, some people would even kill the infant in order to prevent that infant from being trafficked. Military that uses technologies that are used to traffic people and energy siphon and so on and so forth is not military that people trust to recruit to, and is not something that they support allocating resources to, particularly when those resources are on the account of their access to housing, private or public, that they can afford, and job opportunities that they can afford. And the more power is exerted on trying to coerce the feminine, Venus here is in her home sign. And here's the thing, Venus in her home sign is in contact with her sense of value, embodiment. And those that try to, that let's say got rejected by this Venus, and think that exerting more power will get a different result, yeah, it would get a different result. That Venus would go from being tolerant to agreeing that these people are, it's okay to execute these people, let's say. Even if these people are to do with something royal, whether royal military, with the Saturn in Aries, or royal leadership, or royal business class, or whatnot. And together with that, we have Ketu beginning to go through Magha Nakshatra. Again, people don't have veneration for sex traffickers. We want to abolish that from the core point of the creation of a sex offender, but we also don't venerate people that traffic. And again, the more power is exerted upon individuals of a coercive nature, of a basically rapey nature, the more is exposed around these mechanisms, and the more implications it begins to have. It begins to 9/11 on itself. Um, Particularly, okay, when we think about it, let's take something that's not rape. Actual will and consent sexual interaction. There's also energy. Now, if that was by rape, that alchemical, whether astral or not, component begins to create a problem that needs resolution. And the problem begins to manifest its resolution. Which means that the names Mars, penis Mars, names Mars, sex Mars, blood Mars, military Mars, commands Mars, business, finances Mars, real estate Mars, the names are beginning to be exposed of the origin Mars, sex offender, bad use of Mars. And then if people try to perpetuate coercion, they only put themselves in even more powerless position as offenders. Because it's kind of like a person, Um, for example, let's say when I was in between houses, I stole food from Albert Heijn when there were no longer food in the shelter. You were forced to go out, and during the day it was also not so safe to stay in the shelter. And let's say I would get caught about stealing food. Then what is the right thing for me to do? Yes, indeed, I stole food because there's no food in the shelter. It's also not so safe for me to be in the shelter. I cannot work. I'm still waiting for the BSN, VSN, whatever. And this is a situation. I did not know what to do. And place where they would have vouchers, I would need to travel black, or I would fear that they would try to sexually harass me. If I would say, if let's say I don't know, I would be caught for stealing food, and then I would, and let's say it would be a woman that is not thinking to traffic me, because police can also be like that. And let's say I was safe in the situation, and if that, I would reach a hand for this lady's weapon and try to shoot her in the heart. Over nothing. Did you steal food? Yeah, I stole food. This is why I stole food. Maybe that lady has resort for where to find food or where is safe to be. But if I would try to do for that, I got myself messed up in a criminal offense over nothing. Stealing food is not criminal offense. Now, people that did, let's say, astral rape, they are beginning to be exposed. What can be alleviated of this issue? Coming out as ritual abuse survivor. We're saying, yeah, those were things, ceremonies. I was raped, and then I was raping, and so on and so forth. Peggy Van Roy style. That would mean that they would no longer be able to profit off of raping others or trafficking others. Now, what is the wrong thing for these people to do? To try to do that again. So they compounded the amount of offenses, which was basically crimes against humanity punishable by death, to begin with. This is what rape is. And they basically compounded, and we would see that in their portfolios. They would be linked to more estates. And we could see that through either children that they have, writing those estates on the name of children, and so on and so forth. Any trust funds that they are linked to. Any unregistered estates that have people in them. And what is an easy way to find out? Squatting. Squatting is basically occupying an estate where there's nobody in it. If people go against the squatters, they have to explain why is the estate empty. Okay, we can't have people homeless. For example, in Netherlands, there was an organization that would try to put people in estates that are empty volitionally, so that they would deal with the squatting phenomena. And those estates got filled very quickly, even during COVID, even before the war with Ukraine. Which is why I was not living in such an estate. Because I was looking for, basically, resident solutions. They tried to co-house me with a person that lady told me was a serial killer of women, a driver, and um, he was supposedly helped by the community. So probably was committing murders for the community or something like that. The Jewish community. That's like with Catholics or Christians, there would be. If I would put €2 in on the plate, then I could have a nice coffee and hear Sunday Mass. Very beautiful, but they were not helping with housing or anything like that. Yeah, but I'm not Mark the Troll, so. um, and this is what happens when people are raped and tortured because they have lost a sense of self, and they're also susceptible to mind control. They become rapists. If they don't die, they become rapists. Even people are trafficked, they're trafficked, and then they cannot anymore. either they manage to attack their handler or they become handler. Now, for people to leave or evacuate a place, they need to have a place to go to that is safe, that is better from the place they've previously been in. Okay, and this is why, for example, when you live in a certain state, this is also with the full moon in Libra. Let's say you're at a certain workplace or at a certain estate. You do your shadow work, you do your healing, you learn about, I don't know how to hold this, you learn more about your needs, you learn more, you get to know yourself more, and so on and so forth. So next work, next relationship, next housing is supposed to be better. Now, better is according, for example, parents that grew children and the children were growing and they have this big mansion. They say, okay, now it's too much for us to clean this big mansion. Maybe we can, I don't know, rent it and buy a house or sell it and buy a house that is compatible for two elderly people or two houses that are compatible for, per person. That is an upgrade in relevance to the situation where they are, and economicity of holding an estate. Okay, but other than that, people expect their residence, whether it's by location, depending on also what was the shadow work that they were doing. For example, if I escaped in a state that I did half moons to revegetate with the natural vegetation, then next state I eat from the plants that are naturally growing, from the mallows, from the amaranths, and so on. So this is natural to, let's say, what type of shadow work I was doing in the, let's say, previous estate. And the soil is more fertile. Um, let's say I do a lot of shadow work. We're talking about that sex work is not work, and rape for residency is crime against humanity, that the true states, and so on and so forth. Then, whenever is next residence, has to be zero rape, zero slavery, zero energy siphoning. Means also the energy, no warlockism. Now, if it is my grave, then it means that if there are no better conditions on earth, then probably I will die. But if not, the place has to be better. The place has to be zero rape, zero slavery, zero energy siphoning. And independent of ability to work, which is something that I have emphasized quite some. And having the natural growing weeds. Um, and I also tended to, with energy that was siphoned and so on and so forth. So all these things that my energy came to do in the world, or to create in the world, that are benefic, they also have to be there. When it comes to work, when I emphasize that there's no such thing as sex work, and my job should not include abuse, It means that the work should not drain on energy, and it should express what my authentic self. It also means that I should have the access uh, to work and the access to rest. When it comes to relationships, many people who are doing the shadow work, relaxed arousal, not anything else. Anything that is rapey is not loving, is not actually loving. Anything that tries to siphon the energy is not a twin flame. Anything that tries to create handler relationships is crime against humanity, punishable by death. Anything that tries to cloak itself, whether man or woman, and do such things, is subjected to being exposed for the origins of if the origin of the harmful action is with them, is expected to be exposed. Okay, what was done underneath gloved hands becomes visible to the very public eye, even if that person was an occultist, even if that person was woman, or people that partook in something to try to loot wealth. They were doing crimes against humanity, punishable by death. Not torture, not ritual sacrifice, death. And so a lot of people find out, particularly with this upcoming cycle, because the moon is going to decrease, which means we are purging, we are making, okay, but the moon is growing, where an issue is growing into full view. For example, extortion cults, genocide. Oh, that Karim guy, could he? Oh, wait a second, that Drew guy. Suddenly there's pedophilia in his cell after he was trying to improve his conditions, and we know since the 1990s he wanted to say the list of the people. Could this Karim person be on that list? And could he himself, that wanted to litigate Israel for war crime, have participated in trafficking, extorting both Palestinians and Israelis to commit genocide? If he wasn't, then how come he raped someone? It's the same pattern of action, of genocide. And this Venus will apply to square Pluto when the moon decreases, meaning that the more power they try to exert over Venus, the more fixed in her home sign she becomes. If it's not a love that is actually loving, usually Venus if it's not a love that is actually loving, it has no place in my life. If it tries to force its place in my life, it's already committing crime against humanity, punishable by death, because it tries to rape or coerce. And it drains on the natural wealth and glow of the Venusian, which is also financial violence. Nothing that prevents access of women to land and the natural growing crops on the land can call itself anything but crime against humanity. Okay, let's take Kurdistani people and Iraqi people. Let's say tomorrow Kurdistani people have a country. If they traffic Iraqi people, the country is susceptible to